This is Bloomberg Businessweek Daily, reporting from the magazine that helps global leaders stay ahead, with insight on the people, companies, and trends shaping today's complex economy, plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Businessweek Daily with Carol Masser and Tim Stenivek, live on Bloomberg Radio, television, YouTube, and Bloomberg Originals.
And a very good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Bloomberg Businessweek Daily. Carol Masser, Tim Stenivek. No, we are not at Bloomberg headquarters on this Monday.
We're in Lower Manhattan. We're live from just above the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. A really historic setting for a historic jury trial today, or a historic verdict, I should say. And we're going to get to that in just a minute.
As Tom Keene says, we are ripping up the script because we do have a ruling against Elon Musk. So we're going to get to that in just a moment. In the meantime, we've got a really special deep dive today. It's something we do at Bloomberg. We cover the healthcare space. And in particular, we here on Bloomberg Businessweek Daily have been covering women's health in particular. And so we've had some great voices coming your way in just a moment as we tackle some of that, including we've got Dr. Doug Lucas. He leads the clinical side for bone health and longevity science at LifeMD on bone health. We have talked to him before. It's something that's certainly super interesting to all of us.
Yeah, also she's a Rear Admiral. She's a former U.S. Assistant Surgeon General. The first ever Deputy Assistant Secretary for Women's Health, Dr. Susan Blumenthal, is going to join us a little later as well.
Talk a little bit about what's been coming out of the administration over the last year. And we do want to remind you, it's a big week for Nvidia. We get their earnings after the closing bell on Wednesday. So we've got Jensen, Huang, and Michael Dell live this hour from Dell World in Las Vegas. Huang, I always forget.
Jensen is what he goes by. And he wears a leather jacket.
I was going to stop at Jensen and can I just say Michael for Dell? And I don't know. Yeah, I think he's pretty well known as well. So anyway, we're going to get all of that ahead over the next 60 minutes. Stick around, everybody. But right now, we're going to check on the market.
Yeah, Charlie Pellet is holding down the fort at Bloomberg headquarters in Midtown. Hey, Charlie.
And that's what's going on. I do appreciate it. We do have both Nvidia and Dell. They are trading lower. Right now, we've got Nvidia shares down 1.8% and Dell trading lower by 2.2%. All of this on a day when the Dow Jones Industrial Average has been fluctuating. Right now, the Dow is higher, barely up 7 points. That is a gain of under 0.1%. Interesting day for the S&P 500 index. Yes, down 24 right now, down 0.3%. But you run the DES page on the Bloomberg, and we can see that we have got 354 S&P members higher, 148 lower. So in fact, most S&P stocks are advancing. The S&P, though, down 25 right now, down by about 0.3%. NASDAQ Composite Index down 197 for NASDAQ. That is a drop of 0.8%. And right now, we do have our Mag 7 Index trading down by 0.6%. 10-year 4.60%, with the 2-year right now, it is at 4.07%. The 30-year 5.13%. Spot gold, little changed, up 0.1%, 45.45 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude 107.41 a barrel. WTI up by 1.9%. Barrel of Brent right around 111 now, up by about 1.7%. It is the biggest power acquisition deal ever. NextEra Energy has agreed to pay about $67 billion in stock for Dominion Energy, creating a giant utility that extends from Florida to all those data centers that are clustered in Virginia. Right now, we do have Dominion up 8%, shares of NextEra down 6.7%. And as we have been reporting, an Oakland jury has rejected Elon Musk's claims that OpenAI, under Sam Altman's leadership, betrayed its mission to benefit the public by morphing into a for-profit business. Day 3 of the Long Island Railroad strike around New York City, first full weekday of the strike. Long Island commuters dealing with congested roads, packed buses for the ride home. MTA Chair and CEO Jenno Lieber was on Bloomberg this morning talking about the state of ongoing talks between the agency and its unions.
They're going on right now. They resumed at 7:30 this morning. Folks took a break at about 1:30 in the morning last night. I was here with them, and they're back at the table right now as we're speaking. So I don't have an update, but work is going on right now.
MTA Chair Jenno Lieber interviewed this morning on surveillance. Recapping, S&P lower right now, down 29, drop there of 0.4%. Carol and Tim, that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. As we just heard from Charlie, big story this afternoon just broke across the Bloomberg. A jury rejecting Elon Musk's claims that OpenAI under Sam Altman's leadership betrayed its mission to benefit the public by morphing into a for-profit business, finding that he waited just too long to bring his claims against the company. It's an interesting case when he brought it, but it's interesting to see this development.
Yeah, it's a bitter feud between these two entrepreneurs who worked together to launch the startup OpenAI back in 2015. For more, we're joined by Matt Schettenhelm, a Bloomberg Intelligence senior litigation analyst. He joins us from Washington, D.C. Matt, what are the immediate implications of this verdict?
Yeah, so the immediate implications are that this removes a cloud that had the potential to hang over OpenAI going forward. Elon Musk was saying that there was a breach of the charitable trust here, and he had asked this judge not just for hundreds of billions of dollars as a remedy, but also for limits on OpenAI's ability to seek profits for investors going forward. So if OpenAI was looking at a potential IPO, if Musk had succeeded with this lawsuit, that's a big problem. And so the result just a little over 40 minutes ago from this jury, which the judge immediately adopted, is really great news for OpenAI on a for-profit basis going forward. This claim that it has to operate as a charity is no longer absent, that is, Musk succeeding with an appeal of this decision.
So, Matt, help me out here. So is it just a case of timing, like, oops, Elon, you should have done this sooner? Or is it that the actual core of his argument just didn't legally make sense?
So it's exactly where you began there, that the jury didn't even need to reach the core of his argument. It stopped based solely on the timing. And this was sort of a secondary issue at trial over the past 2 or 3 weeks, really didn't get a lot of attention, but it's a very easy way for the jury to resolve this quickly. And the jury had the case for very little time. It took it late Thursday. They didn't deliberate Friday. And here we are Monday morning in California, and very quick decision. And so they didn't need to get into any of those difficult questions of, was there a charitable trust created? Was it breached? And anything along the actual legal merits. It was simply a question of, look, Elon Musk filed this lawsuit in 2024. There's a statute of limitations of 3, maybe 4 years on one of the claims. But basically the jury is saying, look, Musk knew about these problems, about these, the shift to a for-profit model way before 3 years ago. And if he wanted to sue, he should have sued before that statute of limitations had run. This gave the jury a very clean and simple way to avoid, all those knotty questions about whether this was a charity or not.
So is that it, Matt, for Elon Musk? Has he exhausted all his legal options when it comes to this specific issue, or is there more to come?
Well, yeah, so the judge immediately adopted the jury's verdict. She didn't have to. This was just an advisory jury, but she, within seconds, adopted it as her own and ended the case. So he doesn't have many options back, with this precise judge, one wouldn't think. And so the only option now is we're in federal district court in California. The appeal goes to the Ninth Circuit in California. And so in theory, Musk could pursue that, but it's very difficult to overturn a jury decision. And it's very possible that Musk tries, but I don't think his chances of succeeding on an appeal like that will be very strong. I don't think it's really much of a material threat to OpenAI going forward.
Hey, just one last thing. I'm looking at this right through, too, on the Bloomberg. It just talks about Musk's battles with OpenAI are far from over. He's got some separate cases, I guess, trade secret theft and antitrust claims. So more to come, perhaps?
So this case had a number of other secondary claims to it as well, secondary claims where the judge deferred. A number of those Musk had sort of dismissed. It's true that technically there are still some remaining claims teed up here. Are those going to go anywhere? I'm pretty skeptical. I think there was a reason why the judge put these claims first. I think those were the ones that really potentially had legs in her mind. I'm pretty skeptical that the other claims, like the antitrust claim, will go anywhere.
Interesting stuff. Hey, listen, Matt, so appreciate this. As we said, this has become one of our top stories at this hour. Matt Schettenhelm, he is Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Litigation Analyst, joining us on that story. Now, as we kicked off at the top, we mentioned we're live at the New York Stock Exchange. You can see the background behind us. You and I have spent time here over the years.
Yeah, this is like in my previous career, I spent every day down there. So it was nice to see some familiar faces when we walked in. It was
got
pretty
it welcoming.
Cool.
It was really sweet. We are doing, though, a special deep dive. Bloomberg Businessweek Daily. We're talking about health, technology, and healthcare, and more on that specifically when it relates to women's care. And there's been some research that's out.
Yeah, the Menopause Society reporting that osteoporosis, which is highly prevalent in postmenopausal women, has long been associated with an increased risk of fractures. There's a new study that suggests it may also increase women's overall risk of death by as much as 47%, especially within specific ranges of bone mineral density. Results of the study were published just last week in Menopause, the Journal of the Menopause Society.
And it's not just women, it's men too, although women have a higher prevalence than men. Let's get into this. It's somebody we've talked to before about this area. It's great to have back with us Dr. Doug Lucas. He's orthopedic surgeon leading the clinical side for bone health and longevity science over at LifeMD. He's here in studio. He also has his own YouTube show. It's called the Dr. Doug Show, Longevity Through Bone Health. Welcome back. Nice to talk with you again.
Thank you for having me back.
I have to say, I was surprised. I think we were surprised kind of reading in that, yes, it impacts both men and women, but it's more prevalent. It seems to be much more discussed about for women. Why is that?
Well,
I'm not complaining. I'm glad we get attention somewhere, but it impacts all of us as we age.
True. It is more common in women simply because women have lower bone density to start with. So men just have a bigger room to lose bone density before they actually reach that threshold of osteoporosis.
So when we think about it from what new research has told us or given us, is there any indication that we can start doing stuff earlier for preventive measures, eating differently? Last time you were on, we talked a lot about what's being done with hormone replacement therapy. What does the data say? What do the data say?
Yeah, so the challenge with osteoporosis is that in the conventional model, we really look at it as a chronic disease. And like most chronic diseases in the conventional model, we tend to just think pharmacology or maybe surgery. But like most chronic diseases, osteoporosis does respond really well to dietary interventions, exercise interventions, potentially even some over-the-counter supplement type things, depending on what your diet looks like. So there is a lot of room for opportunity to actually improve bone density.
How early, though?
Yeah.
Well, we start losing bone in our early 30s, both men and women. So I would argue let's start as early as possible. Let's learn what our bone density is, what our trajectory is, and then intervene when we need to.
Are the health insurers, game for this, for you to start early? Because it just feels like there's so many parameters about what's okay in terms of testing.
Yeah, it's difficult with insurance because insurance is generally going to want to pay for the doctor's visit and the drugs if you need them, if you qualify for them. Prevention is challenging in our conventional medical model.
Why is that? Why is that? We're supposed to be about preventive medicine. We've been talking about that for years, and yet...
Well, we're better than we used to be, so
Okay.
now some preventive services are covered. But the system as it's built is just not good at educating on nutrition in a way that's meaningful for bone health especially. Not good at focusing on sleep because these things take time, they take a lot of question and answers and back and forth and accountability. And the system's just not built for it.
But I guess what I don't understand is in the long run, wouldn't they save resources? Would it mean less stress on the system? And by system, I mean for our own bodies, but also the health system.
Yeah, I mean, financially, if we could prevent chronic disease, of course the system would spend less on chronic disease. There just isn't a way that I can see in the system to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think about this too, like what I was thinking about your YouTube and what you must focus on, and I don't know if people can call in and ask questions, but I mean, what are we all doing wrong when it comes to bone health? So if we have to be kind of our own activist,
We have to.
right, an advocate, what should we be doing from age 30 on?
Well, I love looking at, you mentioned my YouTube channel, the longevity piece, right? I love looking at bone health through the lens of longevity because I think every 30-year-old wants to live as long and as healthy as possible. And when you look at it through bone health, it gives you a recipe for that. So the diet that's good for bone health is good for your brain, it's good for your heart, it's good for your skin, it's good for your energy, it's good for your sleep, right? So focusing on eating a protein-forward whole foods diet gives you all the tools that you need. exercise that gets you out and moving, resistance training for your muscles, potentially impact for your bones if you can tolerate that. Those are the foundational pieces. And then you can just keep stacking on top of that. Better sleep, better mindset, potentially hormone optimization for those that qualify.
Yeah, I mean, the food, there's a lot of stuff that we can dive into here. I want to dive into the food part a little bit. Do you think there's a misunderstanding?
I want to take notes.
Yeah, well, do you think there's a misunderstanding about, like, saturated fats? Because if you think about a protein-forward diet, some people might say, wait a second, if I'm going to eat all that yogurt, for example, to get all that protein, then I'm going to just blow past what the USDA recommends for, or FDA recommends for saturated fats. Are we a little behind when it comes to this stuff?
It's challenging because if you look at the saturated fat recommendations, it's for the entire population. But the entire population is not sensitive in a bad way to saturated fat. So we have to kind of step away from these global recommendations from a nutrition perspective and start getting really individualized. What I need to eat, what you need to eat, and what you need to eat are all different. So yes, I think saturated fat and dietary fat in general has been demonized in a bad way, and so people are afraid of it. And that does result in less protein, especially from animal sources being consumed.
Like, I do think about that with nutritionists. Like, should we all be seeing a nutritionist early? Like, I can see your kind of, your facial expression, not so sure. Why?
So nutrition's a very challenging space. There is honestly not great research because it's difficult to do nutrition research in a randomized control trial meaningful way. There's too many inputs. So a lot of the older mindset in the nutrition space is really set off of these dogmas from the 50s, the 70s, the saturated fat, dietary fat restriction that really no longer applies. It has been hurting us for a long time.
Doctor, always good to see you.
Thanks for having me back.
Thanks so much for joining us on the program today.
All right, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. All right, right now we're going to head to Las Vegas and Dell World and to Bloomberg's Ed Ludlow, co-host of B-Tech on Bloomberg TV, sitting down with Nvidia's Jensen and, of course, Dell Technologies' Michael Dell. Ed, all yours.
Perfect. Nico's great.
Yeah, thank you guys. Really clear focus in Las Vegas. AI servers, and you have the GPUs that go into the servers, Nvidia. And then you have Dell, absolutely critical in the supply chain.
They chose Scotland of all places
in AI infrastructure. And gentlemen, good morning. Hello.
Good morning.
Michael, in the quarter gone, 1,000 new clients for AI server, for AI factory. It's a hell of a jump. What is it that those new clients, 5,000 total, are actually building now, different to 1 year ago? I think that's probably a good place to start.
I think the change we see is it's kind of moved from testing and evaluating into production. And we showed some great examples on stage, right? With Eli Lilly with 1,000 GPUs.
In the physical world.
It's Samsung. And these are not things that are on the screen, right? This is in the real world with the largest companies in the world. And so it's propagating broadly across all customers in every industry, in every country. And you see the improvement in all the models, and now we have the agentic capabilities. And so while it is exciting and there's been a tremendous amount of growth, I still think it's just the beginning of this wave, particularly when it comes to enterprise, which is really where we have an enormous opportunity.
What's so fascinating, Jensen, is you spent 4 years telling me that we needed to change the definition of the computer in a context of accelerated computing, but the big focus was on the hyperscalers, right, cloud. What I took from Michael's presentation was this is happening, you said locally, but on-prem. What's the Nvidia interpretation of that part of this cycle?
Intelligence has to be produced at the point of context. And so wherever the context is, wherever the action is, that's where you want to produce the intelligence. For most of the early applications of AI, it was in the cloud. A lot of consumer services are in the cloud. However, for Lilly, Samsung, the future manufacturing, a lot of companies, you want the agents to be on-prem because that's where all of your data is, where all your secure data is, your proprietary data, and all of the skills associated with your company is. And so now we have agents that are here, AIs that can do work.
Right.
ChatGPT was fantastic. It launched generative AI.
But it just made content. That was it.
Making content is very important, but doing work is really valuable. And now we're doing productive work incredibly well. That's why they're called agentic AI.
in this new era, what everyone is trying to work out is, aren't all the GPUs locked up at the hyperscalers? How is Michael Dell going to service those 1,000 new clients with the GPUs to build their own on-prem local AI factory?
Well, the supply chain that Jensen has built and we've built together is continuing to scale up. And while it's true that there's more demand than supply, there's more supply that's being added, and customers are figuring out how they start to scale these systems up. So, I think what's also happening is companies are understanding that when they reimagine their workflows using this technology, they don't get 10 or 20 or 30% improvement. They get 10 times or 20 times or 100 times. And that is really the speed that matters to make a business successful. We're doing it ourselves. Nvidia's doing it. And so it's not a secret anymore that these things are possible. And every company wants to capture that speed and translate it into competitive advantage and outcomes.
Dell was the sales channel, right, Jensen? Michael's company is very good to selling technology to America's biggest companies. How's that going to change things for Nvidia going forward? Like the makeup of the types of companies we're talking about are at scale, but there's also that kind of middle market of data center that's being built, different kinds of in the industrial space, in healthcare. Is that something that puts Nvidia into new territory, away from the frontier labs, away from the hyperscalers?
Well, Nvidia is a technology company.
Right.
The hyperscalers have the ability to take our technology and integrate them, operate them into a service. Dell has the ability to take our technology, turn them into a solution that delivers impact to customers. If you look at what has happened, agentic AI has completely, as we were talking about earlier, reinvented computing. We had to do several things together. The first thing, of course, we had to build the brain. This is the Grace Blackwell NVLink 72, the Vera Rubin NVLink 72, giant large language models. The second part now is the Vera CPU that we're now in the process of launching. The highest performing CPU in the world. It's designed for agentic AI. And now this will be the harness running the agent itself, using the tools.
Would you kindly, Jensen, what does harness mean? What's
harness?
The name?
Harness is what puts a harness around the large language model so that it can access memory, access the network, use tools, have local scratchpad memory, working memory, access long-term memory. And so that harness basically turns, if you will, the brain into an agent, okay, into a digital robot, if you will, that can do work. And so now the agent runs on a CPU. We also worked with Dell to create a new type of long-term memory for agents. We call it the Dell AI Data Platform. That's built on NVIDIA. The networking to scale it out is built on NVIDIA. So the agent, the brain, the long-term memory, all of the networking necessary to scale it up, as well as the agent runtime itself, we call it NemoClaw, running in a secure and governed container called OpenShell. All of that has been put together, and now the technologies are the technology parts. What Dell has to do is turn it into a solution that people can use. Dell will do for the world's enterprises what the clouds do for the clouds. Makes perfect sense.
What is the Dell story, Michael, around CPU and sort of like general purpose computing in the agentic era? We've talked a lot about the AI factory offering, the GPU, but actually there's potential for you in more general purpose workloads. The build-out's happening either way.
It is, and the demand is exceeding the supply there as well, as you know. And look, as you move to these agent frameworks inside companies, you use a lot more CPUs. Yeah. And that's just the reality of what's happening, and I think that's only going to increase. So
instead of humans using tools, it's now agents using tools. And agents, as you were talking about earlier on stage, we're going to have we have 1 billion people, we'll have hundreds of billions of agents. People use tools every now and then. Agents are going to use tools all the time, and agents use tools very quickly. And so we're going to need a lot more CPUs, and those CPUs are connected to GPU brains so that the CPUs know how to think, how to reason, how to plan, and how to use those tools. So that's basically how it works.
Gentlemen, what is the biggest supply constraint or bottleneck for you right now?
Well, certainly, memory is a challenge. I think
it is memory.
The advanced node semiconductors are still challenging. It's really, we think about it from the things that we're producing, and
right.
The semiconductor supply chain is ramping, but the demand's growing faster than the supply.
In our case, we provide the technology integrated, and so the memory comes with our technology.
Right.
We've been planning our supply chain for a couple, 2-3 years. We have the largest supply chain in the world. Our partners have done a great job securing supply for us, and so all of the pieces go together. The CoWoS is lined up with the HBM, which is lined up with the Grace Blackwell and the CPUs. And the CoWoS-R, the CoWoS-L, the CoWoS-S, all of it is all lined up. The silicon photonics is lined up.
Right.
Everything is all lined up. It's just that the demand is much greater than the overall capacity of the world.
So the overall capacity, Jensen, should I put my textbook away? Because if I get my textbook out, it tells me that memory historically is cyclical. It's boom and bust. And so you both kind of have to convince the memory makers of the permanency of this to build the capacity that won't sort of fall away. Is that the right way of looking at it? That this is not a boom and bust cycle, it's just a complete change in the structure of that market?
Well, Michael and I do this all the time. We spend a lot of time with the supply chain. I mean, if you ask Sanjay Mitra over at Micron, he'll tell you 3 years ago, during a meeting, I explained the future to him exactly as it's happening right now. And I was really grateful that Micron and Nvidia really lined up all of our roadmap. Tony will tell you over at SK that we did the same thing years before. And so it's our job to make sure that the vision of the future of the industry, we convey upstream to our supply chain so that they are building for it. We also have to convey it downstream to people who have power generators and land and financing and so on and so forth. And so we have to make sure that the supply chain upstream and downstream are prepared for this future. It is true that the simple logic is this, that we have now reached a level of agentic AI, useful AI, productive AI capability. And the way to think about these agents is kind of like just digital workers.
Right.
We have hundreds of millions of digital workers in the world. We're going to have billions of AI agents in the world, and they're going to be working 24/7. And so just as we give every digital worker a laptop and a small part of the data center, we're going to have to give every agent essentially a computer and a little bit of storage in the data center to use.
Think about it this way, you do individual work, as a person.
I do.
And you send it on to somebody else, and there's interactions. Well, now you might have hundreds or thousands of, digital agents working for Ed, right?
That I supervise.
That you supervise. And that's going to help you be way more productive, get way more things done, expand your creativity. Now, it does require a lot more computing and memory and storage and networking and all the things that we're doing together.
Last one on this, like Jensen outlined the Micron and the SK example. 3 years ago, you gave them the heads up. Do they believe you? Are they sort of acting on that?
They're investing. I mean, we're managing through it, but these things are very hard to predict, right? If you tried to predict, in 2023 what the demand was going to be in 2027, you would have a hard time doing that. So it does take a long time to build these factories, but we've got great relationships with these partners we have for decades. That's helping us, and they see that we're winning, and so they want to work with us even more. And it's really a great long-term partnership, even though we'd like more right now.
We're in the beginning of the AI build-out. This is literally the very beginning of the agentic AI build-out. We're going to be building this out for a decade, maybe more, because after this, digital agents will be physical agents.
Then we go to the physical AI. We haven't even started that. I mean, you saw some examples of that, in the keynote. but that is a way bigger market, and it will require all sorts of new infrastructure capabilities.
We're going to, for the very first time, bring IT to the world's 90 trillion other industry. And so there's a giant industry ahead of us to build towards. Now, meanwhile, the supply chain is more than doubling every year. I mean, it's probably quadrupling every year, but we'll still have a hard time keeping up with the build-out for at least a decade, my sense.
China. Jensen, you just returned from China. On Friday on Air Force One, the president said that H200 came up, but that China's position is it wants to support its own industry. Could I just ask what the net outcome was of your trip to China and your understanding of what is not or is allowed with H200 and the customers that you have or do not have in China?
The president wants America to win everywhere.
Right.
The president wants America to lead the AI revolution. And so H200s are licensed to sell to China. The Chinese government has to decide how much of their local market do they want to protect and how much of their local market do they want to expand with more AI capacity. My sense is that the demand in China is so incredible. Just like it is here, agentic AI is also making enormous progress there. My sense is that over time, the market will open. President Xi was very clear that he wants China to be an even wider open market. Premier Li Qiang was very straightforward and explained very eloquently that China will be an open market. So I'm looking forward to China being a more open market.
To clarify, Jensen, you were able to meet with those officials directly to discuss whether or not you can sell to those Chinese tech companies.
I didn't discuss directly with them about H200.
Right.
I was there to represent the United States, and I was honored to do so. I was there to support President Trump, and really glad to do so. But that was really the focus of my trip. President Trump had some conversations with the leaders, and I'm looking forward to what they decide.
Michael, you did not go to China, but I think what's interesting is you are a member of the President's Council of Advisors for Science and Technology, as is Jensen. Your net conclusion on whether or not China will become open to American technology companies to do business there?
You know, we have a business in China. Obviously, we comply with all the restrictions and various controls that are in place, but I hope that there's more economic collaboration between the United States and China. That ultimately is what will lead to greater outcomes and prosperity for everyone, and a greater likelihood of a successful relationship between the countries and around the world.
The final question on that trip, Jensen, is the sharpest rhetoric was probably on Taiwan. We've talked about the supply chain, but what did you take from those comments from President Xi on the issue of Taiwan? Of course, from a manufacturing capacity standpoint, TSMC is a critical partner. You and I have discussed it in the past, but at this moment in time, how top of mind is it for you, the security of supply from Taiwan?
Well, none of us were involved in any of those conversations except for President Trump. With respect to Taiwan, obviously Taiwan is still epicenter of the world's technology manufacturing and technology development. The supply chain is rich in Taiwan. We're also, of course, reindustrializing the United States, bringing manufacturing back to the United States. We're doing so at a time when demand for AI and this beginning of this new computer revolution is happening, and so demand is extraordinary. So as a result, we're building more factories here in the United States, chip factories, packaging, computer factories, AI factories, of course. So we're building factories of all kinds here. They're also ramping up capacity, and the reason for that is because the demand is just so great across the board. I think the answer is that we want to have, it is possible to have supply chain diversity and resilience, and everybody should be seeking to improve that. It is also very true that Taiwan will continue to be one of the epicenters of the world's technology hub.
Michael, I grew up using a Dell computer. You know that. We discussed it in the past. Desktop, laptop. You and I never talk about computers in that context. We're always talking about supercomputers, accelerated computing. both of you.
And I think you should upgrade. I mean, now we have the new XPS 14 or 16. That would be my choice for you.
So what is the story?
These are the best notebooks we've ever had.
We talk about AI PC, but we're going to get Jensen's take to finish. But what is the role of the PC in this agentic age? Like, I'm using a computer at my desk to do work.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, it's still the device that is the center of productivity for knowledge work. And it is right there in front of everyone. And, you know, we have a great business there. And those devices are evolving too. You saw on stage how we're, you know, embedding the ability to run the small models and the local models inside your PC. And, you know, what's happening is customers are wanting more powerful PCs because they want to be able to do all this great hybrid AI. And so it's a great business. It's still very much alive. And it also gives us incredible scale and strength in our supply chain, which helps us secure all the, you know, needed ingredients that we need.
So you spent 31 years working on the servers design together, accelerated computing. That's the scale we're talking about. Let me just be really direct.
We started with the PC.
But why don't you just team up?
I was trying to sell them a gaming GPU.
So what's going to happen between the two of you? A PC with a powerful GPU inside it. Why doesn't that happen?
We have that, yeah.
And what's the plan going forward for that?
Well, we can't tell you the plan right now.
You can tell me.
Very, very soon we like to tell you. You're
interested in the PC market.
Think about the arc. I'm interested in computing, no doubt. Think about the arc of computing. When Michael and I came into the industry, it was kind of at the tail end of mainframes. Not that it was a tail end of mainframes because mainframes go away. But it was tail end of its growth, and it was the beginning of personal computers. We're now seeing the beginning of course, AI in the cloud, and that's going to continue to grow, but we're also going to see personal AI. Instead of personal computers, we want personal AI. So the question is, and the reason for that is just we were talking about earlier, AI needs to be where the context is. If all the information that I have is on my laptop, and I need help, I need AI to help me do work on my laptop, then I need AI to run kind of locally. And if I have a factory, then I need agents to run in the factory. If I have a hospital, I need agents to run the hospital because that's where the
operating room.
In the operating room,
it can't be running somewhere else, right?
Because that's where the context is. That's where the action is.
Yeah, if you've got an autonomous vehicle, right? The AI has to be
run in the car
inside the vehicle.
Yeah.
And so this idea of distributed intelligence and unmetered intelligence, right, where you can generate as many tokens as you want, Ed, on your new XPS 16. You just have to get Bloomberg to get you one. You know, I'm sure we can.
And on that note, Michael Dell, Chairman and CEO of Dell Technologies, Jensen Huang, CEO of Nvidia, live in Las Vegas once again, Dell Technologies World 2026. Back to you guys.
All right, Ed Ludlow, of course, the co-host of VTech on Bloomberg Television.
If those guys are telling him to get a new computer, like a new Dell, then
put in a ticket.
Put in a ticket. Get it. I think it's kind of justifiable. Just throwing it out there.
I think it's really
You got to
funny.
do your research.
You got to do your research.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting too, what we heard from Jensen of Nvidia is basically saying that it will be hard to keep up with the build out for a decade. So again, we keep hearing from investors, from folks in the space, that this is just not a 1 or 2 year thing. It's already been a couple of years, right? But that it's going to go on for much longer.
Yeah, also a really notable commentary from Jensen coming fresh off his trip to China with President Trump. He said he was in China to support President Trump during the summit. Also said that the AI boom is driving expansion of chip making beyond Taiwan. And that's certainly a big question as we think about the future of that region and what the role of Taiwan will be.
I'm curious, too, what we'll get from Nvidia when they report earnings after the close on Wednesday. Shares of Nvidia, folks, they're just down about 2.5% in the trade on this Monday. Stock, though, is up almost 18% year to date. But nonetheless, when you think about AI, you got to think about this company. All
right, I'm also thinking about Charlie Pellet. He's holding down the fort and watching these markets as we do get just a little over 20 minutes from from the close of equity trading. He's up there at Bloomberg headquarters. Hey, Charlie.
Well, hello there, Tim and Carol. Right now we have got the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all very much in the red. 44-point drop on the S&P 500 index. 73.64 where we stand right now, down 0.6%. We've got oil higher, Dow lower. Right now, Dow Industrials down 93, drop there of 0.2%. Tech selling off. NASDAQ down 301, down 1.1%. The NASDAQ 100 index down 1.2%. Both Dell and also Nvidia lower. Dell right now down 3.8%. Nvidia down by 2.5%. 10-year at 4.61%. The 2-year 4.08%. The 30-year 5.14%. Gold flat on the day, up by under $1 the ounce to $45.40 right now. West Texas Intermediate crude 108.38 a barrel, up 2.8%. Brent just topping 112 a barrel, up now by 2.6%. A California jury has rejected Elon Musk's claims that OpenAI, under Sam Altman's leadership, betrayed its mission to benefit the public by morphing into a for-profit business. Ford shares down 2.6% right now. Ford is in negotiations with defense departments in Europe and North America to supply pickup trucks and software to their armed forces. Lululemon Athletica shares, right now they are trading higher. We do have Lululemon advancing by about 0.5%. It is criticizing its founder, Chip Wilson. Lululemon is rejecting Wilson's overtures to install new board members. Briefly, Uber boosting its stake in Delivery Hero, says no takeover for now, and Delta says it will prioritize global expansion over domestic transactions. Recapping S&P down by 0.6%. Carol and Tim, that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, we'll take it from there. Yes, indeed. Carol Masterton, standing live here at the New York Stock Exchange. We're on radio. We are on television. We're on YouTube. We're on streaming. What a great place to be here when I think about all of the companies that have gone public. Yes, we talk a lot about tech lately, but healthcare, we have certainly seen companies over the years make their mark here at the exchange.
And on healthcare and really public health, you remember last week we were talking about the hantavirus with Dr. Amish Adalja of Johns Hopkins. Now, we're actually talking about Ebola. The U.S. has banned non-U.S. citizens traveling to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, South Sudan, or Uganda for the next 30 days to curb the spread of a deadly Ebola outbreak.
It terrifies me. We've got a great voice, though, to talk about this. She served for more than 2 decades as a top federal government health official in the administration of 4 U.S. presidents. And so we are delighted to have back with us Dr. Susan Blumenthal. She's retired Rear Admiral, former U.S. Assistant Surgeon General, and the first ever Deputy Assistant Secretary for Women's Health. I could go on and on and on, but we'd run through. But you are, we love talking with you, your experience, your background. You've seen so much. When we talk about Ebola or a new virus, how do you think about these? I mean, is it just a matter of time before there's something that is akin to what we got with the coronavirus?
Well, I think that what we need to realize is that there are more than 40 different infectious diseases circulating right now, and that infectious diseases have killed more people than war. And that's why we need to stay vigilant against them. We need to keep our public health infrastructure strong and our ability for preparedness and response. And we're at a time where that's being deconstructed, and that's where the new tools of technology can help. AI is already helping us to really do predictive modeling about where outbreaks will occur and what the patterns might be. But we need to stay vigilant against these invisible enemies.
Will the predictive models be enough, or do we also have to make sure we've got the infrastructure, whether it's in government and in our health organizations?
We need to have the infrastructure. I mean, this is critical. And one thing that we need to do in rebuilding infrastructure and reimagining it is to build a seamless system of data and predictive analytics. And that means, because when we saw in COVID, some of our public health departments still were using fax machines, and we weren't doing real-time data monitoring. So we had to scrape the system to find different data sources, and we need to find new methodology, and AI will help to do this as we move forward in this decade and beyond.
How does trust fit into this?
Trust?
And yeah, the question really that I have is, we talked about this with Dr. Adalja last week, is that if we think back to the Biden administration and you know, during COVID and post-COVID, there was a lot of skepticism from the right, including people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's now HHS secretary, about the COVID vaccines. He gets into power. Now he's communicating things from that perch, and there's an entirely different group of people who are skeptical of what he says. So now you have two different groups that are skeptical of what the government has said.
Well, it's very dangerous because vaccines were a landmark public health accomplishment of the last century, and continue new kinds of vaccines being developed, like with mRNA. This has saved so many lives. You know, we wouldn't let our defense system decay, but we're letting our public health system decay. And this is a dangerous thing for the American people and people worldwide.
You're talking about military defense, correct?
Yeah, absolutely, military defense,
Well,
because we want to have the shiniest missiles and methods of defending ourselves, but we're tearing down the defense for human beings in terms of our health.
Dr. Blumenthal, I'm so glad you went there, because we talk about, you know, the size of budgets that we're talking about, what, $1.5 trillion or something, you know, extensive spending, and then there's cutbacks in other parts of the government.
Right.
I mean, do you think this is a one administration thing, or do you think whoever comes in next, we get back to a government that is more involved in these issues?
Well, as the poet Emerson said...
Can we afford to?
So as the poet Emerson said, health is the first wealth. You know, health is not only important to a foundation of our lives, but it's an economic issue. We spend over $4 trillion on healthcare in America. We get the right treatment only 50% of the time. We rank 42nd on life expectancy, and there's a 20-year life expectancy differential based on your zip code in America. That's just a fragmented system. We need to do better. And
fragmented
I believe,
and flawed,
and
right?
Flawed, and that's why, again, the new technology tools will help us move forward. And when it comes to women's health, I think this is an area that's been long neglected. It's a design flaw era, because women were excluded from the research studies on heart disease and lung cancer. These are the #1 killer of women is heart disease. Lung cancer is the #1 cancer killer of women. And yet women were excluded from those studies and prevention trials when we got people to stop smoking, or to look at the 20% of people who don't smoke. 4 times as many are women. Why? So again, we need to use AI and other technology tools to look at the patterns. We need to use it for discovery. We need to use it for access with telehealth and mobile devices to improve access in underserved areas, and to do prevention.
Why do we still need to be our own advocate? And I say that I'm a little bit older. I'm proud of it. But it's just, I actually went to a doctor, not my GP, a specialist, not a heart specialist, but she said, nothing wrong, but you should make sure you go to a doctor and get XYZ done, just as like a base thing, like, because she was a woman, and just saying things are overlooked when it comes to women and heart health and some different things.
Well, again, you know, our healthcare system, it was a design flaw. Women were excluded, and therefore so many of the clinical recommendations are based on data from men. So,
but you've been a doctor for how long? Like, women have been in the profession, right?
So I built, you know, infrastructure for women's health.
I know you did.
It got mainstreamed. We were talking about all these issues 30 years ago, but you know, now we have to bring an innovation agenda back. What you were talking about, the misinformation that's out there. We need to use new tech tools to create a new communication environment, because healthy messaging has to get out there.
Are the incentives aligned for all the different stakeholders right now? And I'm talking patients, I'm talking doctors, I'm talking hospital systems, I'm talking insurance companies.
Well, as Hippocrates says, prevention is preferable to cure.
Yeah.
But most of the funding has gone to treatment-oriented solutions. You know, women are 50% of the population. They make 80% of the healthcare decisions. They make 85% of purchases. And yet their health has been neglected. Only 6% of healthcare investing, private healthcare investing, has gone to women's health, and only 2% of venture capital has gone to women's health. Yet McKinsey has said, because women live longer on average in every country, in America it's 5 years, they live longer, but 25% greater disability. If we invested in women's health, it's, McKinsey says, a $1 trillion boost to the economy by 2040 because of lower healthcare costs, more productivity.
Seems like a no-brainer.
A no-brainer. And so that's what, you know, this new sort of laser beam focus on innovation in women's health is all about. And it will improve not only women's health, but the health of families, communities, and countries.
I hate to tell you, men, there's no babies without us. But I just think about, like, you typically, but follow the money. Like, that's what I don't understand. Like, if they understand the economic impact, why hasn't it flowed?
I don't think the economic impact has really been underscored. as it might have been. And I think that's something that we really need to emphasize, the economic gain. And also the innovation agenda, that there are so many opportunities to explore how, for companies, diseases that affect women only, like endometriosis or ovarian cancer, diseases that affect women disproportionately, like autoimmune illnesses or Alzheimer's disease, and diseases that affect women differently, which are diseases like heart disease or lung cancer. And that's where we need to really invest. And I think companies are starting to come along, because this is the innovation agenda, and it's a new pipeline of opportunities for companies.
Are you hopeful?
I am very hopeful. As Madame Curie, who won 2 Nobel Prizes but was never admitted into the all-male French Academy of Sciences, once said, "I never see what has been done, I only see what remains to be done." And I think if we apply new tools like AI to discovery, make sure that women are included in those research studies, and importantly that the data is reported and journals publish that data, because again, AI is only as good as the algorithms, the data you feed into it.
Right.
And then again, for prevention, for prediction, for early diagnostics, and for access, because it will help to bring care to people in underserved areas, women everywhere. AI should stand for accelerated innovation, but also for everyone included. All people included.
You're optimistic about AI in healthcare.
Well, but we can't bias, but we need to. I am, absolutely.
Always love time with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Dr. Susan J. Blumenthal. She's retired Rear Admiral, former U.S. Assistant Surgeon General, and the first ever Deputy Assistant Secretary for Women's Health. She's also a visiting professor with the MIT Media Lab. I think we should just take her home with us.
That sounds good. Hey, the S&P 500 down about 0.7% right now. The NASDAQ Composite down about 1.3%. When we come back on Bloomberg Businessweek Daily, a check of stocks that are on the move. This is Bloomberg Businessweek Daily.
You're listening to Bloomberg Businessweek Daily with Carol Masser and Tim Stennebeck on Bloomberg Radio and Television.
All right, everybody, we're getting ready to enter the last hour of trading on this Monday, May 18th. Carol Masser, Tim Stennebeck, live here on Bloomberg Businessweek Daily. We are at the New York Stock Exchange. We're going to continue our conversations when it comes to healthcare, AI. It all seems to be connecting. We're talking a lot about the women's health, which has really lagged in terms of R&D dollars, treatment, and kind of respect, I feel like, in the medical community.
We're watching that. We're also watching what's happening in the markets today on a down day, where we're looking at the S&P 500 lower as we speak by, well, I saw it earlier, but I'm having a little bit of connection issue here. Was down about 0.6%. The NASDAQ was under more pressure on this day. Is it coming up on your screen?
Yeah, Carol? NASDAQ is down about 387 points. So we're talking about a decline, forgive me too, as I move it around here on my screen, and it is down about 1.3%.
I was going to say, you're going to have to do some mental math there to take the points.
Monday mental math just doesn't.
Figure out exactly how much things are down.
But listen, we're near our lows of the session, and I think it's once again concerns about the Middle East and the Strait not opening, and so this continues to drag on. And as we know from so many different Bloomberg guests who have joined us live on air in our own reporting and analysis staff, that basically the longer this goes on, it goes from being a short-term shock to maybe a little bit of a longer-term shock, and that certainly has an implication. So that's your trade at this hour.
In the meantime, let's take a look at some stocks on the move today. I'm Tim Stennebeck along with Carol Masser. We are joined by Bloomberg News equities reporter Alexandra Semenova. She is holding down the fort at the Bloomberg studios at headquarters. Alex, what are you watching?
Hey guys, so a big unwind continuing to take hold in those AI infrastructure names that have been driving this rally for the last several weeks. The first company that I'm taking a look at today is Seagate Technologies shares. They're down about 10%, which is the worst day since last April during the tariff sell-off. This is after comments from management at a JP Morgan conference earlier today saying that they don't think that they'll be able to keep up with soaring demand for their chips. CEO David Mosley said building new factories would, quote, take too long, and that is enough to send investors running, taking some profits there after a really strong 8 weeks for the company. This is, of course, amid a torrid rally in the broader semiconductor sector. Just taking a look today at the Philadelphia Semiconductor Stock Exchange Index, that is also down 4.2%. This is as other memory chip makers also fell today, guys.
All right, so Seagate, one of the big laggards in the trade today. Yeah, quite a big dip to the downside. Top decliner, excuse me, in both the S&P and the NASDAQ 100. All right, let's kick it on over to the energy patch. I mean, this was like, bam, a deal in the space today.
Yeah, mega deal Monday for sure. NextEra Energy agreed to buy Dominion Energy for about $67 billion in stock. This is the biggest power acquisition ever. This merger creates a giant utility that expands from Florida to some of the data centers in Virginia. And it also underscores the insatiable demand for AI infrastructure that is pushing utilities to seek greater size and clout amid this surge in demand for power. The deal would position NextEra as the dominant utility in a region that is struggling to meet electricity consumption, and NextEra would pay the equivalent of about $76 per share for Dominion. The company said this in a statement today, confirming Bloomberg reporting. That represents a takeover premium of about 23% based on Friday's closing price.
I feel like that's such a sign of the times in terms of what's going on. All right, Alex, let's go on over to Regeneron, which is also coming under some pressure today.
Yeah, some disappointing news today for this company. Just taking a look at the stock price right now, it's down more than 10%. The worst, actually, it's been underperforming for a while. This is after it failed phase 3 testing. This led to at least 10 analyst downgrades after it failed the testing for its melanoma drug. The biotech was aiming to show improvement in patients with metastatic melanoma, but they didn't have a statistically significant enough number for how long patients lived before their cancer advanced compared to competitor Merck's Keytruda. BMO analysts said that this trial was a defining moment for the company in the first half of 2026, and that sentiment was inextricably tied to these results. So that is why the stock is down so much today.
All right. Yeah, some big moves, really big moves.
Well, remember, last year there was a failure with Regeneron for another experimental drug. Regeneron and Sanofi had tested for lung disease in former smokers. So there's some concern about this building, I guess.
All right. Totally makes sense. Hey, listen, Alex, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Alex Semenova, she is, of course, Bloomberg News stocks reporter, and she is back there at Bloomberg headquarters in New York City with some of the stocks on the move. Check out, though, all of her reporting. You can find it on the Bloomberg and at Bloomberg.com. For more conversations, though, our Stock Movers podcast, 5-minute episodes, big winners and losers. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts.
Hey, here at the New York Stock Exchange, we are continuing our coverage of the intersection of healthcare, technology, and of course, health and telemedicine. Dr. Joanne LaRovere is going to be joining us. She's over at Boston Children's Hospital. She's going to talk a little about AI and telehealth and where she sees the real opportunities.
Everybody's talking AI. It is everywhere. Also, we've got the chairman, CEO, and co-founder of the digital healthcare platform and telehealth company LifeMD. We're talking about Justin Schreiber. He's going to be along in just a moment. So curious to see what he's seeing in terms of growth and maybe how it gives access to people who aren't near a lot of medical facilities. All right, stick around, everybody. The close is coming your way on Bloomberg TV. Tim and I continuing right here on Bloomberg Businessweek Daily.